We would now like to invite Mr. Pawan to the stage to address the gathering.
So very good morning to all of you. And today I here stand very proud as an Indian belonging to a country which launched, any guess? Chandrayaan 3, a spacecraft that landed on the moon. We became part of the elite 4 countries in the world which landed on the moon, and the first country in the world to land on the South Pole, which has a lot of treasures of scientific data. And I think very proud here. It just happened day before yesterday. How many of you watched it live? How many of you loved it? How many of you felt inspired? I think no words. I think literally we watched it with the entire team of Skyroot. It was a phenomenal experience for all of us. And I think really stand proud today on being, being part of this wonderful country which made it happen. And so I'll just start off with a quick journey about, myself and Skyroot over the last few years, and also few learnings from it for all of you, which could be quite useful for you. How many of you are in the first year of college? Amazing, There are a lot of computer science engineers out here, I see. So I think, the future is all yours. And, 65% of India is below 35 years old. And 50% of India is below 25 years old. I think, and this decades of India, this century belongs to India. I think great wishes to all of you. And also congrats to all the winners and all the finalists, for the competition, and all the best to all of you. So I'll just revert back to my school days. In fact, I used to have like big spectacles at that time. And all my relatives and everybody who comes to my house used to think he must be the school topper. But what actually happens is that I probably am one of the last in the school. It's just basically my spectacles which say that, make people think that this guy is a genius, but I was a very bad student at school. And then like up to 8th standard, I still remember like failing in some subjects, and also like getting, around 50 marks in maths, even in 8th standard. So very bad student, I would say, and very dull, bad student up to my 8th standard. Then I changed. My parents thought, nothing is going to work with this guy. They changed my school. Then the teachers there actually did a lot of, found some spark. They thought that there's some spark in this guy. And then they started encouraging me. And I never got so much attention in my life. So I started studying well to retain that attention. And then became, I think, very good at math, science, physics. I really got deep into that, and became one of the, from last few to the first few at school, and then got into an IIT. In fact, I grew up in Vizag. It's great to know like Geetam originates from Vizag, so great to see the journey of Geetam as well. And then went on to join IIT. So it's like got into an IIT and joined as a mechanical engineer, because I was very sure I want to work on machines. Very, very sure. I wanted to become a mechanical engineer. Lucky to get into an IIT. So got into IIT Kharagpur, joined as a mechanical engineer. There again, in fact, my parents told me that you get into an IIT, your life is set. So I believed that, and then got into an IIT. And then I thought my life is set, so I stopped studying there also. And then like very bad student at IIT for the first few years. Then there is one, some of my professors thought that this guy has a spark, and then started encouraging me again. There is from again last few, could go to the first, to probably the good grades in college over the last few years. And then I was very sure that during the college, there was a vibe of entrepreneurship. Everybody wanted to build companies, and coming from a middle class background, I also wanted to build a company in my lifetime. I knew, because I knew the kind of independence you get, the kind of impact you can generate, the kind of nation building you can do as a company, building a company in India. So I was very fascinated to build a company and wanted to do a startup straight out of college, but I didn't have the guts to start a company straight out of college. But then my passion is always with machines, and I felt that rockets are the most fascinating, toughest, challenging machines ever built by humans. They defy gravity, go to space, some of the biggest wonders of engineering ever produced. So that attracted me, and in fact, ISRO, the launches of PSLVs, etc., I used to watch on news, and I was very inspired by the kind of journey which ISRO had. and then wanted to join ISRO at that point of time. And very lucky that ISRO came to campus, my campus. ISRO came, and then I had to compete with the best of the minds at IIT Kharagpur. Not being having a very good grades, I was a 7-pointer in college by the time I completed my college. And then luckily got among the 4 people who got selected. I was the only non-topper who got selected at ISRO and joined ISRO as a scientist. And 2012 was the time I joined ISRO as a scientist. I think phenomenal experience. I became part of the largest rocket program ever built in India called LVM-3. It's in fact widely dubbed in the media as the Bahubali rocket. It's a huge, massive rocket. I had the opportunity to work during the last phase of its development. Over the last 6 years, I was part of that project, being part of the first 2 successful missions. And then always that entrepreneurial bug is always at the back, saying, oh, have to start a company, have to start a company. But I never imagined whether you can start a rocket company. But that thought even did not come to mind, because I'm a rocket scientist and I want to build a company. But the thought of starting a rocket company did not come to me for almost like 6 years. And then suddenly one fine day, it just struck like a lightning and said, can we build a rocket company out of India? Then at that moment when I got the thought, I realized that it's very, very, very difficult, because I was part of the program. I know how complex, how difficult it is, how much capital it needs, how much people it needs, how much talent it needs, how much government support it needs, a lot of, so I immediately thought it's not possible. But still, the entrepreneur bug in me always said, there is some possibility, and started actually reviewing it and, started checking whether it's possible. And then realized that it is actually possible. It's very difficult. A lot of stars need to align to make it happen, but still it is possible. That's when in 2018, that's me with GSLE LVM-3, was the largest rocket built in India. And during that time, as a young engineer at ISRO. And then in 2018, I took the biggest decision of my life, to step out of very stable, very active, very, very comfortable and very appreciative job. In fact, I used to love my job. I used to get so immersed in the rocket tech that I used to literally, even in weekends and nights, I used to just keep studying and learning more out of them. So with deeply immersed, then I took the biggest decision of my life to start a company, rocket company out of India. At the time in 2018, there was no policy. Just imagine, people thought you're mad. There is no policy to even, allow anybody to launch rockets in India. So how can you build a company building rockets in India? So that's what, a lot of people laughed at it. Just the thought of, starting a company which has absolutely no policy backing. And then at that time, there was no funding environment in India. There is no private space company which actually raised a significant amount of funds. There is even no fund in India has any thesis. Every fund has a thesis. They have these sectors like, e-commerce, they have sectors like edtech, etc., etc. But space was never part of any fund in India at that time, naturally, because there was no policy allowing that environment. So no policy, and there is no funding environment. And there is, in fact, rocket science is real rocket science, and it needs the real talent, which is mostly available only in the government at that point of time, because only the space program is all about the government at that time, and there was no talent in the private sector. So that's one major challenge. And people used to think that it takes decades to build a rocket, decades to build this tech and then launch a rocket to space. So that was the environment where nothing was there, nothing seemed right. But still, I think that's what made me take that leap of faith, because in the gut I felt it is possible. Because of course, a lot of problems need to be solved, but everything can be solved. And that started with the leap of faith, and literally with nothing in that environment. In fact, we just started with 2 people, me and Bharat, my former colleague at ISRO, and we are really good friends, best friends, and we thought, like, let's start the company together. And then we started the journey in 2018. And then now we are just in July completed 5 years as a company. And then I think, so new space reforms have been announced. 2018 we started, 2020 during COVID, how many of you remember the COVID period? So it was great fun at home, but of course it was quite a depressing moment for economy. And then at that time the government felt, let's accelerate India's growth with a new set of reforms. And they put space reform as one of the key reforms which country needs, because India has huge potential in space. India over the last 60 years has been built a great space program. We are all proud of what ISRO has done. We have launched to Moon, Mars. We have been the first country to succeed in a Mars mission, the first attempt. We have built huge rockets, huge satellites. I think it's a phenomenal journey, and ISRO, India felt that let's open it up to the private players. And then at that time, we were just like, a 2-3-year-old startup with just few people. And then the space reforms were announced. And this is with the Honorable Prime Minister during the inauguration of the space regulatory agency called InSpace. And over the last 4 years, I think we did phenomenal amount of innovation. We test fired India's first cryogenic, privately built cryogenic rocket engine, completely built with 3D printing and with very futuristic tech. We were building a rocket entirely with carbon fiber, one of the first few in the world. And we have done a lot of great testing. We have signed the first MOU with ISRO to get their support of their test facilities, launch facilities. And by 2022, our team has crossed 200 people. Just from 2 people in 2018, in 2022, we have crossed 200 people. And in fact, we felt when we started off, one of the biggest doubts is, can we raise capital? Because building rockets is not easy. You need to raise hundreds and hundreds of crores. Can we raise capital? Just took the leap of faith, started, and then we raised $68 million over the last 4 or 5 years. Became the largest funded space tech startup in India, and we never imagined 2 to 200 people, 0 to $68 million. And then we won 2 national awards for our contribution to to rocket science, to engineering, and in fact, like InSpace, the space regulatory agency, started in 2022 as setting up a great milestone, a great opening for India's space sector. So it's a phenomenal journey of 4 years. And then the biggest event of all have come. In fact, on November 18, 2022, history was made. We became the first ever private company in India to launch a rocket to space. And something very, very interesting about this launch is that we became one of the first few companies in the world to succeed in a rocket launch in the first attempt. And I think this is a very historic milestone, considering that a startup of just 200 people came together, started in a time when there is no policy, when there is no funding environment, persisted through years, built a lot of technology, and then, able to launch something as critical, as complex as a rocket to space, becoming one of the first few companies in the world itself, very less companies in the world, less than 10 companies in the world are able to do such a great feat in the world, and that's being an Indian company, I think is a proud moment for all of us. And I think this also created a lot of inspiration, a lot of confidence as a company for us at Skyroot as well. And then this is a small video of a little journey of our rocket. This is our test firing of the engines. I think sound, if somebody can switch on the sound. Yeah, so that.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Event number 96 completed.
Yeah, so that was some of the moments from the launch. So it's a rocket which reached space, crossed the 80-kilometer line, and then today we stand as the only company, first company and only company to ever launch a rocket to space, in India, and that's what In fact, after the launch, the Prime Minister Modi, Honorable Prime Minister, said, this launch proves that sky is no limit for youth in the country. And sky is no limit for startups in the country. I think that has been a phenomenal achievement by all of us. In fact, that's our Honorable Minister KTR Garu, who came for our, in fact, who was kind enough to come and celebrate with us on the success party of the mission on the eve just after the mission. And so that's Mr. Somnath, Chairman of ISRO, and our Space Minister, Dr. Jitendra Singh, who witnessed the launch live at the mission control. And that's Prime Minister Modi and, President of India, like great words from them on our launch. I think there was a lot of celebration across. In fact, for almost weeks together, the entire one team was celebrated across the country. That was Skyroot team. Almost 200 people. The kind of effort they made, the kind of spirit they had. I think that has oozed our spirits to the next level. I think it increased great confidence to all of us, and naturally a lot of appreciation. So we are on the magazine covers. We are everywhere. In fact, recently I was with the Prime Minister delegation along with President Macron of France, etc. And in fact, we won the Startup of the Year by CNBC. In fact, they only award typically, unicorns in the country. We were probably one of the early stage startups. We ever became the Startup of the Year by CNBC, and then Forbes Leadership Award. And recently I was at the Rashtrapati Bhavan, invited to Rashtrapati Bhavan, among very few companies in India to get invited for the reception for August 15th, Independence Day. I think that's the kind of encouragement we got after the mission. Everybody celebrated it, and in fact, it's a great boost for us. In fact, it inspires us to do more and more over the next few years. Probably maybe land something on the moon in the future as well. So that's the kind of journey we had. And now I'm going to. So what next? So we launched the rocket to space and did it in a record time of 2 years. Became one of the few companies in the world to achieve it in the first attempt. So what next? So this year, we are targeting by the end of the year, probably, we are targeting our next rocket, which is a 7-storied building tall rocket, which will launch multiple satellites to orbit. And that will make us like one of the first few companies in the world to be able to launch satellites to orbit. And more and more launches. Next year we're planning more launches, and then we'll keep on ramping up the launches. And in future, how many people want to go to space? Yeah, so in fact the mission statement at Skyroot is in the long term, we want to open space for everybody. And probably, in the future we want to create a world where probably each one of you can go for a holiday in space, go and visit other planets. And probably every student in the world can actually launch a satellite before they graduate. That's the kind of world we imagine, and we have to solve one big problem, that is low cost access to space, building rockets which can become like aircrafts, opening up space for everybody. I think aircrafts have opened up the world for everybody. Rockets will open space for everybody, and space has innumerable resources which can sustain trillions and trillions of people. And as a spacefaring civilization, I think the future is space, and we want to open up the new frontiers, play our role in accelerating its efforts. And I think that's a very exciting future for all of humanity. And we're looking forward to people like you, young talent like you joining this journey. And I would like to just briefly go through what is the message from Skyroot journey, which will be probably very important for all of us. I think the first big message is, I think teachers have a lot of power to shape the future of every student. So the same thing happened to my life as well. So I request all the teachers here to give great attention to your students, and actually they have the potential to change the future. And I think it's very important to build that great professional relationship with every student. I think that's very strong message, in fact, from my life. And I think the second biggest message is always follow your passions. For example, when I was at IIT, almost everybody used to take an IT job, or everybody used to go for a finance job, right? So I felt that, my heart is in machines. I want to build the best, most complex machines in the world. And then at that time I took, in fact, very few people join government jobs straight out of IIT. I took my spirit and they said that my passion is machines, I have to get it, and I want to go to space because that's the most complex arena. And then I took my job in ISRO, and then then that made me start Skyroot and etc. etc. I think something which everybody, if you feel that this is your passion, I think please follow the passion, even though everybody else in the world goes in the opposite direction. So I think that's very important. And I think fundamentals are the key. The reason why probably I could get into an IIT and get into ISRO, etc. is because I was very sound in fundamentals. In fact, I used to spend a lot of, whatever time I spent, 80% of my time I used to spend in understanding the very fundamentals of either the tech or business or everything. In fact, I think fundamentals are everything. For example, even for example, Dhirubhai Ambani, so he is very sound in business fundamentals. He's not an MBA from Harvard or anything else, right? So it just needs very strong, clear fundamentals in everything, whatever you do, whether it's tech, business, whatever it may be. So I think fundamentals are the key, and that's what actually enabled my journey over the last few years. And always think big. In fact, many people think that if you start a rocket company or something huge for the world, the probability will be failure. In fact, many of the people, when we started Skyroot journey, many people think that the probability of failure will be very high, because extremely complex, needs government approvals, a lot of red tape, a lot of talent need, and very few people in the world succeeded in it, in such attempts in the world before. So naturally the probability, people feel that is very low, but in fact it's on the contrary. When you actually start something very big, think something very big, start something very big, I think you will have less competitors, and in fact the world will conspire to make it happen, because people would love to work with you, investors would love to invest with you, and I think the whole world will support, governments would love to support you. I think always think big, so we have only one life. Solve the big impact problems. Many people think that let me start small like this, then I divide 5 years, 10 years, and then I start the next big thing. I think that's the wrong approach to have I think straight away you have to hit the big bang, because every year on your life is very important, and I think building every company is a 10-year, 20-year-old journey. I think it's very important to have that perseverance. Always hit the big thing which you think you should create impact on, directly get there, bang on, and the whole world will support you. I think that's one big message from the Skyroot journey. And I think entrepreneur, many people think that getting a job or going abroad or doing a PhD, and then so different people have different thoughts. But in fact, about the best career, but I think according to me, the best career option is entrepreneurship, because it gives freedom. It gives independence. It gives an opportunity to build the country. It gives an opportunity to create employment. In fact, like the impact you can create through entrepreneurship is immense. The satisfaction you get is immense. And I think everybody, should at least think about starting a company if you have not. I think because that is the best career option. If you want money, I think nothing better than entrepreneurship to give money. If you want satisfaction, nothing better, because I think I'm one of the most satisfied people because of the kind of work I do. That's all because of entrepreneurship. And if you want great impact, entrepreneurship is the way to go. So everything you want, I think the best career option is entrepreneurship. So please explore if you have not yet explored. And then of course, entrepreneurship is not for everybody. And in fact, I joined a job before starting a company. So I had 6 years, I was working at ISRO. So if you want to get into an engineering stream, if you want to get into a company, I think space technology is a wonderful platform for all of you. I think it across fields. I think Bharat has described some of the fields like, mechanical, aeronautical, computer science, a lot of different fields of engineering work towards building a rocket. In fact, rockets are autonomous, so they're completely autonomous. It goes at a speed of 8 kilometers per second. You cannot have a remote control like a drone, It has to be automated. Even if you land on the moon, it's completely automated, The landing which you have seen is completely automated. It needs like amazing scientists across computer science, mechanical, aeronautical, aerospace, chemical, across domains. And I think it's a phenomenal opportunity for all of you. And space has just started in India, It's just 2 years since the space sector has been opened up. I think great future for us in the next 10 years. And I strongly suggest exploring space as a career in the future. In fact, we welcome at Skyroot as well, as we expand our teams, we'd love to have few people from Gitam as well. I think that is something to remember when you take up new career opportunities. And then I think to end with, I would say that sky is no limit for youth in the country. Sky is no limit for all of you, and all the best. And for you, and probably you're the future of the country. Thank you.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to My Startup TV.